So I wanted to make a video responding to some comments because I got some really good ones, and I think both that their opinions should be heard, and I'd just like to share my opinion. The comments that I left in response essentially summed up because they're not as easily seen as a video. I'm not going to be reading them word for word just because most of them are long, but I will be putting them on the screen. I'm censoring usernames, but no shade to any of these people. They're all obviously very smart people and spent a lot of time thinking about what they were going to write. So, like, total respect to everyone that I'm responding to a comment to. You guys are great. So, since this one's kind of long, I'm kind of just going to summarize each paragraph. So, the first paragraph of this one basically says that at this point, really all they care about is that someone is a good person, even if they believe in something that's admittedly stupid, like the flying spaghetti monster. As long as you're a good person, that's what's important to them. And then they also said, just because there's no proof doesn't mean it doesn't make people feel better, and it doesn't stop them from living their life to the fullest. The first portion of that, saying someone being a good person is the most important thing, I do agree with. That is why I do not make a habit of going after individual religious people unless they're public figures, like Ken Ham, who also is just homophobic and terrible. So, because, I mean, like I said in my other video, although I do think religion is harmful, I do think there are things that are a lot more harmful. This just happens to be one I'm very passionate about, and that I think I know channels that I have watched from skeptic channels have helped a lot of people escape dangerous religions, and I want to be a part of that as someone who's very passionate about it. I will admit, whenever I was a younger teenager, like 15, 16, I would get annoyed whenever I would see super religious posts and I would leave rude comments. And that is something that I've worked really hard not to do anymore, because I will admit seeing random Bible verse in someone's bio makes me roll my eyes a little bit. And I am very glad to say that now I keep it on my own platform. And unless someone else is spewing something harmful because of their religion, I will just comment on that harmful thing. And no Christian or Muslim or any religion is obligated to watch my videos or look at my page, nor are they obligated to continue a conversation that they may start having a debate about something. So overall, I agree with that, but I also think that just because someone being a good person is more important doesn't mean that other aspects are not important. I'm not saying that I'm not saying this person meant that, but I would just like to give my view on that. And then the second part is the part that I do hold issue with. The fact that it's fine if people believe in nonsense and if it makes them feel better, essentially, and that it's not preventing them from living their life to the fullest. While I can't say for certain, it depends on the religion if it's preventing you from living your life to the fullest. For religions with a concept of heaven and hell, or religions with the concept of karma, I would argue it is preventing them from doing it, because it's limiting the experiences you're allowed to partake in, many of which are arbitrary. I mean, obviously, there's some good ones in there. Like, the Bible says, don't kill people, rather hypocritically considering how many people God kills in the Bible. But, so there are good rules in there. But I will say that at least within Christianity, they are very few and far between, at least compared to the amount of rules in general. And the kind of moderate Christianity that most people in America follow is still preventing you from doing things that otherwise wouldn't matter. Like, for example, premarital sex, even in more moderate sects of Christianity, it's still very, at least heavily stigmatized, if not completely banned. The second portion, the second paragraph basically says, it says two main things. Firstly, that religion can create community and charity. And second of all, that although there are lots of arbitrary rules in the Bible, most Christians will follow it, and that the Bible supposedly says that Jesus basically went, yeah, the rules are important, but what's most important is loving your neighbor, which I will say is a biblical inaccuracy. In Matthew, Jesus said that he came not to abolish, but fulfill the law. So although I am very grateful that a lot of Christians do take it from the perspective that the teachings of Jesus as a person are more important than the rules themselves, and I do think as much as that's cherry picking, it is preferable. I will say that is not the position that Jesus took, and that's not me throwing shade at Jesus. I mean, the Jesus in the Bible was written at least 50 years, but usually between 60 and 100 years estimated after Jesus died. So we don't really know what the real Jesus was like. But the Jesus that's presented as a Bible character, I agree, is a good person. Do I think Jesus existed the way that the Bible portrays him? No. But as a kind of based on a true story kind of character, I'm not saying that to like throw shade at the character. I'm just saying that is not an accuracy to what Jesus said. It's more so an accuracy to how people interpret what Jesus said. And then the thing about community, I'm going to separate community and charity a bit. The thing about community, I know this person is not saying that you need religion to have a community, so I do not want to seem like I'm putting words in their mouth. But I think the community that I'm not going to say about all religions here. This video is mostly about Christianity, so I'm talking about this from a perspective of Christianity here. If you want me to get into it on other religions, I can. But with this context of us talking about the Bible, the community that comes with church, even a really great church, comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with the falsehoods, first of all, of it being a religious community. It comes with, depending on the denomination, large or small, loosely or heavily enforced arbitrary rules. It comes with a requirement of staying in that religion and, to an extent, that church. And these are things that non religious communities really do not have. For example, the biggest place I've found community my whole life has been the furry fandom. I've been a furry since I was, I think, somewhere between 9 and 11. And while the furry fandom is full of drama, it's not like laden with baggage of this is based on a false thing that we are presenting to you as a fact. You can maintain those relationships with people that you met in that community and leave the community without a level of, I guess, people having a bit of distaste or being off put by you leaving it. It's okay to grow out of being a furry and stay friends with people. To most Christians, growing out of Christianity is not seen as a good thing, even if they keep it to themselves. Although I will say, in my experience, most of them do not. It's just like, yes, it does give you a community, but is an unhealthy community really better than no community? You can make an argument, yes or no, either way, and that's really, in my opinion, not something I have a strong feeling on how people perceive that. If you think having an unhealthy community is better than being alone, but personally, in my opinion, having a community that is based entirely on a falsehood and outcasts you, at least to a degree, when you leave that community and you lose some of those relationships, or at least the closeness that you had with them, you lose even the meeting place where you would meet these people, you lose those things. You don't lose that with being a furry. You don't lose that with being an artist. You don't lose that with a club or a fandom or even a therapy group. Like those things are not as judgmental to you leaving them as a religion will be. And then essentially the third paragraph, I agree with, basically that the church has done a lot of harm, regardless of the good things that it does have, and I agree with that. So you can read that on screen if you want to, but I don't really have any arguments for that. So because I don't disagree with anything. So feel free to read that if you want. If not, I'll just continue. And the last paragraph is essentially a thesis of their little essay, which, by the way, to the person who wrote this, if you see this video, I love that you formatted this like an essay. You do not know how happy that makes me. I used to write my ex's essays for him in college sometimes just because I like writing essays. So just props to you that this was formatted like an essay. It makes me happy. Um, so the next one I want to go over for me is this person is talking about specifically Christian theology. So obviously I am not going to go into, oh, I know this doesn't apply to every religion because we are specifically talking about Christianity here. I would just like to make that clear. The first point was just that they do think people who believe in God have a genuine faith in them, which I'm sorry if I came across as not thinking that was the case. I very much acknowledge I know people who I knew someone who was in a cult, and I can tell you certainly that she believed that with every ounce of her soul and still does to this day, as far as I'm aware. So I can definitely agree with you there. I have extended family who's evangelical. I had a friend throughout most of middle school and high school who is still in a cult. So I can agree with you there, and I'm sorry if I came across as not thinking that was the case. However, after that, I have an issue with pretty much everything else this person said. Again, no shade to them. They are very well spoken on it. I just think they're wrong. um, it starts with the fact that Christianity's God is a God of peace. The God of the Bible is self-admittedly not a God of peace. The God of the Bible is vengeful and petty and admits himself that he is jealous. To start out, the God of the Bible spent 3 of only 10 commandments telling you basically to worship him. 3 commandments that could have been spent on things that were left out, like don't SA people is a good one. That is nowhere in the Bible. Beyond don't be an adulterer, which, I mean, their focus on that isn't really that you violated someone, it's that you had sex before marriage. Not to mention the flood, where God thought only Noah and his family were basically good enough little Christians to live, so he killed every other living being on the planet, which, if you think about it, will include plants and sea life because of the mixing of salt and fresh water, and obviously plants, because plants need oxygen. Like, God killed the entire planet, essentially, because they weren't good enough for him. There is a thing where the Bible tells you how to beat your slaves. In Exodus, it says that you can beat your slave as long as they are able to get up a day or two later, because, and I quote, they are your property. In Deuteronomy, it tells a woman that she must marry her rapist for, I believe, like 50 silver or something. God makes a woman have a miscarriage for cheating on her husband. This is in Numbers, and is also part of why I think the Bible is not against abortion. If you go read that section of Numbers, I will put it on the screen. I'm not going into it here, but I'm considering making a video on it. And those are just a few of the more, like, well-known things in the Bible, well, except the last one, that people that happened in the Bible that people are well aware of and still say that the God of the Bible is a God of peace. The God of the Bible is a violent serial killer with the temper of a 14-year-old. In this next part, they argue that premarital sex not being allowed is actually a good rule because it can, quote, prevent relationships focused on sex and accidental pregnancy, etc. Premarital sex being banned is not a good thing. It promotes purity culture, it promotes sexual repression, and it promotes impulsive, unplanned marriages. Again, like whatever video I said this in before, see Girl Defined. Scroll back to their oldest video, and then tell me that it does not support people impulsively marrying someone so they can have sex. Of course, I would like to acknowledge asexual people exist, and not everyone even wants to have sex, even if they are, or even if they're not asexual or somewhere on the ace spectrum. But for the vast majority of people who do, and also ace people who may still have sexual feelings, just not sexual attraction, it can result in, like, severely unhealthy relationships with sexuality. And when I say sexuality, I mean sexuality as in, like, you as a sexual person, not as in, like, sexualities like gay, straight, bi, pan, whatever. Yeah, banning premarital sex is just a restriction on people's bodies. If someone is able to consent to you and they do so, then it's fine. That's as consent and being an adult are, like, well, obviously those go together, but you know what I mean. Consent is what makes sex okay, not if you're married or not. And also, relationships focused on sex aren't inherently a bad thing. I've had a friends with benefits in my life twice, and both of those relationships, one of which I'm still in, are very important to me, and I very deeply cared about those people. And our relationship being purely both platonic and sexual and not romantic has never been a problem. It's fine. Of course, if you accidentally have a relationship focused on sex, that's an issue, but that's an issue of you need to go to couples therapy, not an issue of you should have read the Bible. I'm not saying this person is saying that that's the solution, but a lot of people are. But also that relationships focused on sex are not inherently a bad thing. There is no shame in having a friends with benefits, having a hookup, doing those things as long as you are safe and consensual. It is no one else's, especially some religious groups' business. And in regards to accidental pregnancy, it is a statistical fact that abstinence-only sex education results in more teen pregnancies and results in more accidental pregnancies and more abortions. Because people are going to do that. Okay, it's for most people, it is human nature and it is normal and it is okay. And when you don't teach people how to do that and say you have to wait till you're married, you either get people like Girl Defined who get married like a year after meeting someone, like at all, and who talk about how I wasn't attracted to my husband on my wedding day, or you get people who become abusers because they don't know how to have a healthy relationship, or you get people who just do it anyway, feel bad about it, and then didn't do it safely because they were never taught how to. Also, the argument of God is forgiving because he sent Jesus, blah, blah, blah. You can still do bad things and go to heaven if you just turn to him, whatever. Not that this person is saying it in a preachy way. I don't know if they're Christian or not. But when people say that, because they did make that argument, at least from a theological standpoint, which is true, it is true that for Christians, depending on the severity and your denomination and stuff, for the most part, if you sin and you repent, you're fine. But that presents a whole other host of issues, one of which being, well, at what point does that stop? What if someone does something that is actually morally abhorrent and not a stupid rule, and they can just say, LOL, sorry, God, I love you, and he goes, cool, you're going to heaven? That would be a moral problem. There's also the problem of claiming this God is loving and peaceful and such, but in reality, he's a narcissist. You have to love him and worship him, otherwise you burn for eternity. And I mean, again, being non-religious or being of a different religion is considered a sin. So it's idol worship. So also, by the logic of the Bible, if you are, I don't know, let's just say a Hindu, you go to hell. Maybe you've never even heard of Christianity, right? But you still go to hell because you rejected God. And then also this last line really, really gets to me. This is the only area that I maybe throw a little shade at this person, assuming they are a Christian. If they're not, then they're just citing theology. To God, murder and lying are equally bad. That is exactly what I was getting at with there is a moral problem here. Of that, for example, me having premarital sex is just as bad as Hitler. So, on both terms, one, premarital sex doesn't hurt anyone, and Hitler was Hitler. Second of all, Hitler was a Christian. So, does that mean Hitler went to heaven as long as he repented before he died? But because, assuming by hopefully fucking never become a Christian, does that mean that I'll go to hell even though all I did was have premarital sex? Because according to God and according to the Bible, which is accurate, according to the Bible, this is the way that God supposedly feels. So this person isn't being like inaccurate, but it's a moral issue that lying and murder are equally bad in the Bible, and that what determines you going to heaven or hell, if you're one person's a liar and one's a murderer, is if you turn to God. The middle line basically says, my point is some religions are good to follow because they support and want you to follow good rules. I just explained why all of those rules they listed pretty much are terrible rules. And also that there are a bunch of arbitrary rules that I wouldn't say are good or bad. They're just stupid. Like, don't wear mixed fabrics, don't eat shellfish. Like, unless you're allergic to shellfish, eat shellfish. Like, I'm basically vegan, and I don't care if people eat shellfish. And then this next part, which I don't really have an issue with, but I'm just going to read it because I don't want to paint this person in a bad light. So I'm just going to read it. Christians should not go out of their way to protest against abortion, hate LGBTQ people, be mean, force their religion on other people, or other things because God does not support that. Christians should show no hate but love instead. God says love your enemy. So, okay, I get this has good intentions, and I do agree. However, Christianity is a very force your religion on people theology. I mean, again, idol worship is any other religion is considered idol worship, and they think they have to save you. Maybe not all Christians think that, but biblically that's what you're supposed to do. You can argue on if LGBTQ people are even mentioned at all in the Bible, and you can argue on the Bible's opinion on abortion. It really depends on which version of the Bible you're using. From my perspective of reading the Bible, I would say abortion is neutral. And there are parts of the Bible that mention gay people other than the mistranslated one, but they're all vague enough that I don't think there's a conclusive thing to come from that. I think it's intentionally vague. Um, so those are very subjective issues, but regardless, people shouldn't be attacked for them. But in terms of theology, those are very vague, wishy-washy issues. Again, regardless, if it's actually, let's say those things were part of the Bible, that still would not make it okay. In fact, that would make it less okay, in my opinion. But, you know, I just want to be accurate, I guess. And then this Christians should show hate, no hate, but love instead really gives me the vibe of there's no love like Christian hate. Um, Google that saying. I think it's self-sufficient. If you've ever been shit on by a Christian with the whole hate the sinner, love the sin mentality, I think you can understand what that phrase means. And then I have no issue with this last part at all. Everyone should be able to follow their own religion, lifestyle, and respect other people's religion and lifestyle, and try not to force their beliefs on people. I agree with that. I do think we should respect the person and not the beliefs. Beliefs earn respect, opinions earn respect through credibility and positive impact, which I do not think Christianity has had either of. However, generally, yes, I agree with this. That's a very small nitpick. Again, I was a little harsher on this one just because it was inaccurately talking about the Bible, but I do not have any ill will towards this person. So if you are watching this, again, I know I was a little harsh. You worded your comment very well, even if it was not super accurate to the Bible. So I appreciate the respectful comment, and I appreciate you sharing your outlook on it. So I'm not trying to, like, be rude or anything, and if I came across that way, I am sorry. So those are the main two I wanted to go over. I was going to go over more, but this video is already 20 minutes long, so we're not going to do that. Maybe there'll be a part 2, maybe there won't, depending on what other comments I get. We'll see. But I guess that's my 2 cents on 2 of, I think, probably the most interesting comments that have been left on that video, that I really just felt both the comments themselves and my opinion on them needed to be seen more. So major props to both of these people for being respectful and having, like, positive discourse and stuff. Props to them. Thank you for being respectful. Y'all have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching.
I stare at the populace in prayer. I look at 'em talking to the air.